What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. As always, it's your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me as he does each and every time, my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast and the Green with Envy basketball team, the one and only Greg Maneikis. What's going on, man?
What's good, brother? How we doing?
We doing good. I mean, hey, coach, we're back to 1-1. I know everybody here is always excited when the boys get back out there in the rec league. So we're back in the win column after last night. So I know you got to be feeling good. You said you were texting the group chat today. You've been thinking about plays and basketball all day.
Well, the thing is, I got to the gym around 4:30 after work, and I had been pantomiming all the moves from the game last night and just going through plays in my head. Sent out some horns action, some old Brad Stevens sets to the crew to watch and study up for the next game. And I got to the gym. I brought my shoes. I brought my ball. And the first thing I go in, I take a jump shot, and immediate pain in my knee. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm not shooting around today. So I ended up just doing 30 minutes of form shooting, at the free throw line, which, by the way, I'm very happy to say, although I have not hit a 3-pointer this season, I have not missed a free throw, which I'm very proud of.
Hey, we all got to play our roles here. Apparently, you're on that Al Horford plan, no back-to-backs.
Yeah.
Can't be getting back out there. But so you hit me up about shooting around, and I kind of thought about everything you just said in some form went through my head because before our game last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, I had a little bit of time. I had some family in town, had a little bit of time to go get that workout in. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to just go for a little over a mile run. And then I'm going to shoot around for 20 minutes. This will be perfect. This will be a quick, compact 35, 40-minute workout. Of course, there were some kids playing there. So I started, all right, I'll take it light. This is good. Get a little light workout in. Got down the stance a little bit too low one time to try and play some defense on a 19-year-old. Didn't go so well. Felt that in the back and immediately called it. But see, now, this is where our maturity comes in.
Yeah.
You felt it, and immediately you pivoted. I felt it, and immediately I stopped. I'm pretty proud of us, man. Usually we would have tried to play through it like some true knuckleheads.
Can't argue with the body, Jerry.
The body knows all. The body knows all. But all right, so for this episode, we wanted to start in some place a little bit different. We're gonna get to everything Celtics related. We put out a Twitter poll in our Green with Envy on our Twitter account the other day that we're going to talk about a panic level, see where everybody's at. Got to just check in right now. Celtics coming off a win against the Blazers, so hopefully feeling like things are getting a little bit better. This poll was put out just before that, but we want to check in with everybody. We're going to talk a little bit about, this past week going up against some East contenders. We're going to talk about now being in the 2 seed. Grant, Joe Mazzulla, crazy Joe Mazzulla, something going on there. By the way, I have another crazy anecdote, which I don't know if you saw, but we're going to talk about some more crazy Joe Mazzulla antics. And then we're going to preview the upcoming 6-game road trip for the Celtics. But I think without a doubt, probably the biggest story from last night, Greg. Last night, in between one of the breaks during the Celtics game, they were asked, if you could have one meal for the rest of your lives, what would it be? And the Celtics went through and gave their answer. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to go through and read everybody's answer to you, Greg.
Okay.
And then I want you to give to me what's the worst answer and what's the best answer, okay?
Okay. And is worst meaning what I think is just not the best food?
Yeah, it can be what's the worst food, or it can be that's an insane answer because you have one meal for the rest of your lives and you can't eat that over and over again. Even if it's a good food, I think it could be the answer because it's you got to think about the context matters, Greg. We're a context matters show.
All right, my brain is working, man. As I said,
so you take it what you will. You take it where you will. But here we go. So let's start with Jaylen Brown: rice, fruit, and steamed veggies. Al Horford: rice, beans, veggies, and I know he added in some fried plantains there. So I'm gonna say that. By the way, shout out to Jack Simone. I'm using your tweet for this. Appreciate you putting everything together. Marcus Smart: seafood Alfredo. Peyton Pritchard: pasta. Blake Griffin: Italian. I like that. Left a little vague. Derek White: chicken, different sauces, and rice. Grant Williams: some version of fried rice. Malcolm Brogdon: hot wings. Sam Hauser: medium well steak and mashed potatoes. Jason Tatum: tacos, Taco J. And Luke Cornett: also tacos, but originally answered his wife's chicken Alfredo. Don't know if you've ever had it, Greg. So feel free to go ahead and say Luke Cornett's wife's chicken Alfredo, but I'm not sure if that's going to be the one that you go with here. But all right, let's start with what's the worst answer out of those?
Ooh, I feel like it's got to be Sam Hauser. First of all, who gets a very well done steak? That's just insane. Like of all the steaks that you get, like like what cut of meat are you getting that you feel like you need to get it well done? Like the most cooked you're gonna go with this steak is medium, right? Like it's
Yeah,
always medium
100%.
rare. Like yeah, medium rare is the way to go. So I think Sam Hauser, although I do love steak and potatoes, like that, I would eat that almost every day of my life as well. I just think the idea of a very well done steak is insanity. What are
Yeah,
your
it was
thoughts
it was
on
it was met with a lot of booze. Like that was immediate. I was watching it and I was interested because this is a pretty good topic. And as soon as I heard, because they were kind of cutting back to the broadcast when this happened. So on League Pass, you get to kind of watch these things as they're playing out until they come back. So it was right as Hauser, you could just hear him say medium well steak, and then it transitioned to the broadcast, and all you heard was just a smattering of booze.
that?
I
Hmm.
mean, it's a wild answer. I know he's a Wisconsin boy. This is like, I think, a Midlands, like heart of the United States, meat and potatoes. Who was the
Hmm.
guy from the Red Sox that was like, I think Mitch Moreland, when he's
Okay.
like, what
Yeah.
do you eat to keep your body in line? Meat and potatoes. Like, all
Yeah.
right, bro, I get it. Like, calm down, man. But that's like a wild bad answer. I think the only other one that is in contention as a bad answer, and it hurts me to say this, as the chicken wing king, Malcolm Brogdon, hot wings. I mean, I love hot wings so much. If that's the only meal you're going to eat for the rest of your lives, like this is what I was saying at the beginning when you asked me to define how these go. Like
Hmm.
in that context, hot wings is a wild answer.
Well, here's my thing. I feel like a lot of them were kind of misinterpreting the question. Like if the question is what's like your last meal on earth, maybe hot wings is the best answer.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fine.
right. But if you're gonna go, you need to eat this thing over and over for the rest of your life. One, you got to consider your health as well. So like the well-balanced meal, I think, is the way to go. So the first couple of guys, I think it was Jalen and Al that had like the protein, they had the vegetables, they had the carbs. That's going to keep you feeling good for the rest of your life. It might not be the sexiest pick. It might not taste the best, but like overall, you're going to feel good. Can you imagine if like your favorite food in the entire world became your least favorite food because that was the only thing that you were allowed to eat? This is how I feel about like steak in general and steak and cake. I love both of those things. I can only eat those like once a month max, because if I have it
Mhm.
too much, I start to like take for granted how good steak can taste, how good a chocolate cake with chocolate frosting can taste, bro. Like I need to limit the amount that I have my favorite things. Because if you have it too much, you know me, man. Like I am a man of extremes. If I
Okay,
like something, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
I was waiting for that because I was gonna say, if I know anything, so from my time living with you, sometimes you just eat soup for a week and a half.
Oh
Like it's
yeah,
it's one
that's
it's,
so
it's one of the
bad.
most insane things I've ever seen. Or there's times where you'll go on a quote unquote diet where it's just you just cut cheese out because you've spent the last 2 months eating cheese on everything, and so it's these extremes. So I know that you can relate to this particular question very
Hmm.
well. And I think you're right. I think the variety that both Jalen and Al have is in the ballpark of probably the right answer. I also want to shout out Derek White. I mean, we know that I love Derek White on the show, and we're going to talk some more Derek White here in a little bit. But chicken and the different sauces, I think
Hmm.
that was an important addition. And then rice is just a good side. Rice is especially when you mix it with the different sauces. See, the different sauces, now you get to mixing up that flavor, right? You have your
Hmm.
two staples, and then you can kind of work around that with the different sauces that you have. So I think between Jalen, Al, and Derek, those are probably the three best answers that the Celtics gave.
Yeah, if it's the one meal you're eating for the rest of your life, right? But okay, so let me throw this to you. If it were your last meal on earth, what are you going with? Because I feel like that's the better question.
Yeah, if it's the last meal, ooh, I mean, this is where like I'm a big hot wing guy, so Brogdon's got me thinking, but I think if it's my last meal, I want a little bit more variety. I don't just want one thing, and
Mhm.
hot wings are just so dominant. Like they go hard and they dominate in the paint. But I think I'm gonna go with it'd be some type of Chinese food compilation, maybe some dim sum. Like, I think that's where I would go, because I can get
Mm,
a bunch of different things. That I can get a pork bun, I can get some, I can get some dumplings, I can get the, the rice and the sticky leaf. Like, there's just a lot more of things that I really like that all can kind of be under that umbrella. So this is me answering the question without then being like, oh, chocolate cake from this one location, and pasta
mhm.
from this one location, and a
Yeah.
burger from this other, which I think technically you could do, but that's just cheating in my opinion. So if I have to
Okay.
do it, I'd find one good place, one good dim sum place, or one really good Chinese food place, and that would be where I would build my final meal from. How about you?
Mm. I'm tempted to go with, a very well done steak, but like like a prime rib, like a
Now that
medium
Sam
rare.
Hauser mentions it, that does sound pretty good.
Like medium rare prime rib, like aged for like I don't know how long they age steaks for, but aged for a significant amount of time, I think would be really great, along with some like garlic mashed potatoes, a buttery garlic mashed potatoes with some like onions and spinach on the side, like caramelized onions. I think could be really good. Dessert, obviously chocolate cake all day, maybe some chocolate lava cake, avalanche cake. But I really, really like my mom's General Gao's chicken that she makes.
It is
For those
good.
of you
I've
out
had
there
it.
that don't know anything about me, I am half Chinese. My mom is Chinese, so she makes some bomb ass Chinese food, and her General Gao's chicken is mwah, chef's kiss. Shout out to mom.
I like that. Let's keep it wholesome. Let's keep it in the family. And you know what, Greg? We've stalled long enough. Let's get into some actual
Can I
Celtics
ask you
basketball
one more
talk.
thing?
One more thing, King. He's back. What's
Okay,
up?
so this isn't about food, but
Hmm.
if you had the option, you're on this deserted island or whatever, and you have a device that allows you to play sports, right? But you can only pick one season of a team to watch. Which season are you reliving over and over again? Which team in which season?
So that's already, so a team in a season that's already happened. And it's the only sports I can watch forever and ever on this deserted island.
Yeah, but you get one season. So you could pick like the 2000 Patriots or the 2004 Red Sox.
I
You know
mean,
what I
this is
mean?
easy. It's the 07-08 Celtics.
You going Celtics over Red Sox?
Yeah. I mean, listen, in a former life, baseball is my number one love. I mean, that's just not the case. I mean, if you're asking this to Will in 2007, it's probably some type of Red Sox season. But
Hmm.
since then, it's easily been, very dominated with the Celtics. And, let's just be real. Baseball gets really boring. I'm all for this new pitch clock they got going, and then let's see what happens. It feels like a new wrinkle to the game, although there is an old man purist in me that from like actually playing the game, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like,
Mhm.
as a guy who didn't have a lot of steam, like I had to like kind of mix it up on these runners a little bit. Like, it is going to put, guys who don't have the top tier skill at a big disadvantage with some of the tricks you can do. But now there's new tricks that you can kind of work on. But if I'm just watching, old school baseball games, I just haven't felt that same connection to baseball in the way that I feel it with basketball still. And I think back to the reason why, since I was, what were we, 18, 19, whenever that, that championship was happening, like since then, that's been the biggest part of my life. If you're asking me this question today as a 33
Mhm.
year old, that's easy. My answer without even hesitating.
Okay. The only other thing I was considering was watching a season in like the prime 80 Celtics. Like, do I pick the 86 Celtics? Because we weren't there for that. And everyone
Right.
talks
It
about how
feels
that was
new.
one of that was one of the greatest teams of all time. The basketball is a little different back then, but I think watching the 86 Celtics, something that I still to this day have not gone back and watched every single game from that season, which at some point I would like to do. I think that would be my alternate answer, but you're right. 07-08 Celtics all day.
Yeah, that's the one. And with that, we're hoping that this version's team, 2022-2023, is going to end up the same way. But as with all seasons, there come some road bumps along the way. And obviously, the Celtics have hit a few of those looking back over the last week and a half or so, starting with a game against the New York Knicks, which they lose on the road, come back, have a nice win against the Cavaliers at home, followed up by 3 games that I think really kind of sent Celtics Twitter, Celtics fandom into a bit of a tailspin here, lose a big lead to the Brooklyn Nets at home, lose that game by double digits, come back and a 2 overtime thriller against the Knicks that left some of us on this podcast wondering if they were still going to have a relationship by the time it ended, because the game just would not end. And then followed up by a really heartbreaking another overtime loss to the Cavaliers. And as I said at the beginning of this podcast, kind of righted the ship here with a win, a nice easy win, a nice solid win against the Portland Trailblazers at home before they hit this road trip. And so with that, Greg, I asked out to our Twitter following, Instagram as well, but mostly on Twitter, where are we at as a fan base on a 1 to 10 panic level? Now, this was before the Portland game, but I wanted to get a read where everybody's at. And so these are kind of I tried to tier it. We talk about tiers and context on the show a lot. So I put it out there as if you're a 1 to 3, you're kind of feeling like, guys, this happens. We're still going to the Eastern Conference Finals. I still feel like this is us and the Bucks. This is our conference. We'll see the Bucks there, and we'll figure it out. 4 to 6, you're growing concerned. You're starting to let it creep into your head a little bit. If we end up in a 7-game series with the Cavs or Knicks, can they squeeze this out? If we don't have Rob Williams, who's out once again for 7 to 10 days, are we going to have enough bodies to go against Joel Embiid, or, what the hell's going on with Grant Williams and Joe Mazzulla? That's the growing concern, 4 to 6 range. And then 7 to 10 is you're in a full-on panic where you think, oh God, if we play Miami, we're probably going to lose at this point. And luckily I was happy to report that there was a very, very low percentage that fell into that 7 to 10 range. So it felt like mostly everybody was still feeling pretty confident, 58.5% in that 1 to 3 range, 36.6% in that 4 to 6 range. Greg, where do you find yourselves now as the Celtics are now with a 2 seed, 2 full games behind the Milwaukee Bucks in the Eastern Conference?
Will, context clues. Do you know what I voted for?
I'm going to say see you in the Eastern Conference, 1 to 3.
Well, if you looked at the screen, my friend, you would see a check mark next to 7 to 10. Please not Miami round 1. I was one of the 4.9% of people that voted 7 to 10.
But it's shame. Tell me more.
It's not that I'm panicking, but I just really don't want to play Miami in round 1. My guy Celtics Canada hit me up on Twitter, and he was just like, "Hey man, like Joe Mazzulla is a real problem. Like if we end up in a matchup with a good coach, like we're going to be at a huge disadvantage." And I don't think that for all coaches that are out there, but Spo in particular, like Spo is one of the, if not the best, he's one of the best coaches in the entire league. He's going to get everything he can out of the Miami Heat. And like a 2-7 matchup with the Heat right now is the likely scenario, in my opinion. So I was expecting the Nets to fall out of the top 6 and Miami to actually take the 6th seed. If you remember a couple of weeks ago, I put out my predictions for what that would happen, and I had Miami at 6. But if Miami ends up at 7 and we stay at the 2 seed, which I think is likely to happen, I do not want to see the Miami Heat in round 1. But if we take that away, just like in general, my feelings about the Heat, I would probably put myself in growing concern, because there are some signs here with this team, especially the inability to close out games, Joe Mazzulla's end of game lineups, his rotations being out of whack and all that stuff. Like there's definite concern for me. How about you?
I mean, I'm on the border of that 3-4. So either still see you in the Eastern Conference, but probably leaning towards that 4, because I do feel like there's been some growing cracks in the armor here with the Celtics team over, not even just this recent stretch, just in general. I mean, I was looking at this earlier. We talked about this a few episodes ago. We get this idea of who this team is, and a lot of that was formed in that first month and a half where, holy crap, this team is an offensive juggernaut. Well, if you start to look at it, so in October, November, they were first in offensive rating in the entire league by a pretty fair margin. I mean, they were on a historic pace. Since then, in December, they were 27th in the league. In January, they were 19th. February, back up to 7th. And it's only been 5 games in March, but they're 21st in the league. So this offense isn't terrible, but neither is it historic. Like this offense has not been great for a long time. And so I think you've been seeing that there are issues, which is why I think I fall into that growing concerns. When you talk specifically about the Miami Heat, I'm with you. Spoelstra is a coach that definitely keeps me up at night. But at the same time, I just don't think that roster is built to really beat the Celtics. And I respect the Heat enough that I, number one, just for my own sanity, I'm just sick of playing the Miami Heat in playoff series. Same. It's ugly basketball. It's not fun. We can hop on playback and try to make it fun, but it's still not. Like, it's just ugly, brutal, bruising basketball. And you got to wonder about Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo when you get into that situation. But I think ultimately they would prevail. But I think the growing concern area is really where I'm landing with this team. You look at, some of these matchups they've had with the Knicks and the Cavs, especially, and I think the Cavs, they beat them at full strength. And then just, it was a miracle they were even in overtime. Never mind the Grant free throws. I know that's a terrible look, but when you think about what happened the night before and the fact that they were there with a chance to win at the very end, like that's impressive within itself. But you look at just some of the matchups with the Knicks and you start to think about, we talked about it. Is Rob Williams out again? How reliable is he going to be? We're going to talk about Grant Williams and Joe Mazzulla. I'm very confused as to what's going on with that situation. And, with the offense trending the way it is, and I think a lot of the Celtics, I think when they have bad offensive possessions, that's what leads to the Brooklyn comeback. They start getting casual. They start getting nonchalant. The ball stops moving. They start getting bad shots. And that turns into the Brooklyn Nets or another team being able to make that comeback. To me, it's very, visible when you watch the game. Their bad offense is what turns into the comebacks for these teams. The defense has been holding up its part for the most part when they don't have that bad offense to initiate the offense for those other teams.
Yeah, and I think it's all like the mindset of the best players. If the best players come out and they're willing to move the ball, like in that Cavs game, I thought Jalen did an unbelievable job just being willing to make the extra pass. He ended up with 9 assists in that game. And throughout the game, I felt like he was just making the right decision over and over again. And it really felt like he went into the game knowing he has to move the ball. He can't do it all by himself. There's no Tatum in that game. He has to be the guy to kind of set the tone for the team that, yeah, he can still score the ball, but he's going to do it a little differently than he has done when Tatum's on the floor, right? And if the entire team comes out and for, maybe they can't do it for a full 48 minutes, but limiting the amount of minutes in which they're not thinking extra pass and beautiful game basketball, which we know they can do, but for whatever reason, they just like stop doing that at the end of quarters and at the end of games. And I know that, for all the crap we give Mazzulla, the sound bites Joe Mazzulla gives are great. Like they're not just coach speak. He's always saying like, guys, we're not playing the right way. Like this, when we play this way, when we make the extra pass, when we do this, when we do that, that's what makes us great. This is who we need to be for the rest of the season. Like all these great things that he says in the huddles. Like if I was in the huddle as a player, I'd be like, hell yeah, Joe, like you're saying the right thing. How about you like put the right lineup on the court? You know what I mean? Like,
you're one step away,
you're so close, Joe. Cause like, that's the thing that gives me hope with Mazzulla is that I think at the end of the day, he says the right things, but as we've said all year, there's still a learning curve for him and he needs to learn these lessons sooner rather than later. And I actually think the last game in which we blew out the Blazers, we got lucky. Shout out Chauncey Billups for just like not playing any of your good players in the fourth quarter. And like when they got it to 14 with 5 minutes left, I was like, oh, imagine he puts Dame back in. Maybe they were tired. I don't know what happened in that game, but they just didn't put anybody back in the game, which allowed us not to put anybody back in the game. But hopefully that like, a light bulb goes off for Joe and he's able to say like, oh, in the fourth quarter, like maybe I don't just have to put Jaylen Brown back in the game with 8 minutes because that's what I always do. You know what I mean? Like these little things game to game where he can be a little bit more flexible, just like in his thinking, because he's just way too stubborn. And I respect it because I know you as a coach, you have to have firm beliefs in your philosophies as a coach, but like he also needs to recognize at the end of the day, Derek White has been the third best player for the Celtics most of the season. He should be on the court in crunch time.
I love that you just said that. I was thinking about this earlier, probably earlier this week. And if I have to rank the Celtics this year, obviously Jalen and Jason are going to be the top two. I think it's pretty clear Derek White has been the third best player on this team. And this is no, this is not a comment against Marcus Smart. I think he's probably been I think I'd probably put Al Horford over Marcus Smart as well, just for importance this year. And that's not to be, that's not to, to speak ill of Marcus Smart or to say that he's had a bad year. I mean, just from availability and from what's the production's been on the court, the Jays are obviously always going to be the most important to. Derek White and Al Horford are the next two guys on that. And for me, I had this conversation with Adam a couple weeks ago where when you look at those closing lineups, there's three guys to me that are always going to be in there. And it's pretty damn close to Derek White, might having to be the fourth one that's always in there. And then that fifth spot is, what do we need? Is it Marcus? Is it Brogdon? Grant, Rob? We'll get into that here in just a minute, but let's actually take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk about that and some of those issues. So as always, Greg, we're always trying to figure out what is going on the mind of crazy Joe Mazzulla. Like you said, he does. It's been a really weird year getting to know Joe. Like you said, he does give some answers that are insightful, that are just, they're deadpan, they're transparent, they're honest. But then you kind of scratch your head at some of the decisions that go along with it. By the way, before I get into this next part, so the newest fact that I've learned about my case towards Joe Mazzulla being some form of a robot or other alien life form. I forget which morning show it was in Boston, but it had Ted Johnson, the former Patriots linebacker, they were interviewing Joe Mazzulla, and he referenced the conversation he had with Mazzulla. I don't know if it was earlier this year, maybe last year. This man, this is lending some real credence to the crazy Joe Mazzulla. He sleeps with duct tape on his mouth.
Why?
It's something about it's like a breathing thing, and just helps him get better sleep. He does mention later that he's transitioned to some form of a mouth guard now, which is more normal. But this man was literally sleeping with duct tape.
Can you imagine walking in on your significant other and like seeing duct tape over their mouth? I'd literally be like, there's somebody in the bathroom that's about to come out and kill me. You know what I mean?
I'd run out and call 911 and just figure there's someone in the house. I gotta go ahead and call 911 and get some help out here. So I don't know. That blew my mind. I had to share that with you. I had a feeling that you would enjoy this piece of evidence.
That's freaking hysterical. Yeah, Joe, you know how I feel about Joe. I've kind of given my thoughts off the record on why he is the way that he is, but he's a character, dude. He's such a character, and he's frustrating to watch, just like Ime was frustrating last year. Like, there were a lot of times last year, like, everyone now revisionist history is like, oh, Ime was such a great coach. It's like, was he really? Like, he definitely rubbed a lot of people the wrong way for the first 4 months of the season.
And this is what makes it, and this is why I got to give Joe some credit, and I can't be too overly critical. You can't do anything to make fans happy, right? Because with Ime, part of the big issue, to your point, was before things changed and became, man, Ime was the right coach. He got to this guy's tough love. It was, hey, dude, can you stop calling out everybody after every game? Like,
yeah, can you stop sending respective all-stars to the corners and go ISO Dennis?
Yes.
Like, that was our fourth quarter offense. And maybe, our fourth quarter offense this year sucks. So, like, maybe we should have done that.
Maybe we should go back to that. But to your point, it took to that Knicks game that broke us. We were just, to this day, the RJ Barrett bank shot, and I think it was late January. That to me is the moment the season changed, because that was the last time we saw Marcus Smart and Dennis Schroeder out there, because Ime realized he can go into his settings on NBA 2K and actually switch out the lineups and mix them up a little bit. And so then we started to see a change in that. But when it comes to, Joe Mazzulla, he is experimenting. He is doing more. So it's the exact opposite. We're still not happy, right? Because we're like, where's the continuity? What are we doing here? How does this make any type of sense right now? And that's where I think with Joe Mazzulla, it really gets to, and this is a great point by our guy Winfred here checking in on YouTube. Ime had Romeo, Neesmith, and Schroeder at the beginning of the season. Please don't act like he did not turn this team around. We're not even saying that. He definitely did. But my point was, we were super unhappy with him the first half of the season, the way that he was managing that team. And then once it started to work, it became, man, Ime really knows what he's doing. And with Mazzulla, he's doing the opposite of where he is mixing it up. He is experimenting, which is part of what we asked for with Ime. And now we're kind of asking for, hey, man, we thought we had like an 8-man rotation, and then the rest we would, fix little holes, little divots here and there. And now I don't know what the hell to expect, because Grant Williams is on this run where, throw the Cleveland free throws to the side. People were worried about his 3-point shoot. He went 4 or 5 in that game. Yeah, it sucks he missed those free throws. That's 2 games this year. Knicks game, Cleveland game, where 2 different Celtics just missed. All we do is make free throws, and we have 2 more wins on this season. But you know what? That happens. And so I don't really want to kill Grant for that. But you look at his playing time since the All-Star break. The last game against Portland, basically a DNP. He played 12 minutes, so it makes it look like it's closer to his average, but that's only because he played in the fourth quarter with, as you mentioned, Greg, the Blazers took out all their guys. And so he was basically playing with that second unit. And this one is really hard for me to figure out what Joe Mazzulla's thinking is, because if it was the elbow, which was why maybe Grant wasn't playing earlier, then you don't play him with the scrubs. You just keep him on the bench for the game. So kind of throw that out the window. And then you look at a guy like Grant, I don't get what Mazzulla is doing, because when you look at the teams that the Celtics have to play, when it gets to, nut crunch time, when they play the Bucks, he's needed against Giannis. When you play the 76ers, he's needed against Embiid. When you play the Knicks, he's needed against Randall. When you play Miami, he's needed against Bam. So in the majority of series they're going to play in the postseason, this guy's going to be needed. So why are we kind of messing around with his minutes, the mentality? Like, I just don't get what the plan is with Grant. Maybe you can help me out.
Yeah, and I think there's some credence to what you were just saying in that, like, in the Knicks game, right, we needed to go up against Julius Randle. Not that Grant did a great job on Julius, but I think he was the one guy that is able to, withstand the battering ram that is Julius Randle for that many minutes. Like, a lot of people like, oh, like put somebody else, put Marcus Smart on. Marcus Smart can guard him a couple of times, but if you ask Marcus Smart to guard Julius Randle every single possession, he will go down as he did when he got like kneed in the nuts.
Yeah.
Like,
you can't do that for 7 games if they end up in a series.
Exactly. You can't do that. So like the fact that Joe played Grant against the Knicks, the extent that he did, tells me that he might actually be telling the truth when he says he just thinks it's matchup based, and that there is no other grand plan other than he just knows in some matchups, Grant Williams, he thinks is the best option for the Celtics, especially on the defensive end. Now, to me, my point would be like, well, Derek White, as we just said, is the third best player on the team. Like, in crunch time, Derek White has got to be on the court, and we can figure it out. For 5 minutes, we can figure out a way to, like, double team Julius Randle if we need to, with Derek White on the court. Like, there are other ways that we can go about it versus sacrificing one of your best players all year for someone who's just not as good. And Grant Williams is just not as good as Derek White is. So maybe it's not like, maybe it's only you go offense, defense more. Joe, use a timeout. You know what I mean? Like, there are ways in which you can still maximize Grant Williams' effectiveness on the court while still being able to throw Derek White on there, majority of those minutes, because we all agree Derek White is the third best player in the Celtics this year.
Yeah, Derek White needs to be in basically every closing scenario for this team. He's just too good right now. There's just no other way to look at it. I've been on the all defensive kick for Derek White for a while now, and I think his offense, other than the JJ Redick curse spell that he had after appearing on the podcast and seemingly forgetting how to shoot for a little bit, I mean, he's having a career year shooting the ball, and we always talked about the decisions he makes, the way that he can guard multiple positions. He definitely feels like a guy that needs to be out there. But let's just go back to Grant with the matchups things for a minute, and shout out to Landon for chiming in here as well. That, yeah, I mean, I guess I see that it's in some ways matchup based, but I still don't understand a game like the Portland game where he just doesn't play and then plays with the scrubs. Like, I don't. There's part of it where you think about with a guy like Grant Williams. Like, this is the first time I've had these thoughts where we've debated a lot. What's Grant's value going to be in the offseason? And this is, more of a topic for the offseason, but you look at the way that Joe Mazzulla is utilizing him. And, this is the first time I've really thought, man, there's a pretty good chance that Grant might just not be back with the Celtics, and not because a team comes and overpays him. Just maybe the Celtics don't see him, or at least the head coach that they just committed to does not see him as essential as I thought he was throughout a lot of last year and throughout most of this year up until recently, that he's a true solidified role player in an 8-man rotation that's seeing minutes night in and night out. And this is the first time I'm feeling like, maybe this is just the last year of Grant with the Celtics. Yeah,
and like that might happen. I just think with Grant, he's going to have to earn his money in the playoffs. Like, throughout an 82 game season, there are always guys that, I mean, early in the season, dude, everybody was on Jalen. Like, people wanted Jalen out of Boston. It's like, what are we talking about here? Like, why are we trying to send Jaylen Brown, our second best player? Like, we're so lucky to have him. And, it seemed like 70% of Twitter was just all over Jaylen Brown all the time. Even like on Celtics blog, there were a lot of people writing a lot of negative Jaylen Brown articles. And it's just like, is this really like the hill that we want to be on right now? Like, talking about Jaylen Brown not being the right second banana, like, does that make sense? And then with Grant, like, it seems he's kind of just taking over that mantle for Celtics Nation right now. And I think really it's just because he's kind of annoying. You know, like everyone sees him bitching and moaning to the refs all the time, and he's not a great player. So a role player shouldn't really be doing that. So I think like the fact that he is just a little bit annoying, it rubs fans the wrong way. And it was endearing last year. And it's like, oh, he's quirky. He likes Settlers of Catan and all this stuff. And this year it's just like, all right, Grant, settle down. Like, you're not worth $20 million. You probably should like bet on yourself, do your thing, but like you should probably be happy with 12 to 15. Like that's a good price for you. If you just embrace that, I think when people heard that he didn't want to take the deal the Celtics offered him, he wanted to bet on himself. I'm sure a lot of people are just like, dude, come on, like sacrifice for the team. But like, this is his one chance to make a lot of money in the league. And like, you can't really fault him for that, but that's kind of how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
We got a comment here from Winford. He says, I want Grant to leave if he's not going to have a role. Where the defense is coming from, I have no idea. Gallo, Moose, Hauser,
Rob, a third of the time. I like that last part. Point. But that's also, one of the things that I was thinking of as I'm starting to feel like this is the first time that this might be Grant's last year here. Is we talked about it, but from a different angle of, oh, you go get Muscala because he has a team option for next year. Gallo should be coming back next year. And it's like, oh, hey, that's insurance if Grant leaves. But in that scenario, I feel like the thinking was always, oh, someone went and gave Grant the bag for, 18 to 20 million. The Celtics were like, yeah, it's too rich. We're out. We'll get by with Muscala and Gallo for a year, and then we'll kind of figure it out from there. The scenario that I'm starting to see now feels a lot more like maybe we just don't think Grant's that dude. He's not him, as I believe is something that the kids would say. He is not that dude in an 8-man rotation for us. But that's something that I think time will only tell. I do appreciate you in the comments here on YouTube. Greg is letting us know about some of the other off-court activities going on with Grant Williams, which maybe they play a role. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. But let's move on here, Greg. Let's move on to looking ahead here. So Celtics beat the Trailblazers the other night. We're recording this on Thursday. Going to drop Thursday night, Friday morning for those of you listening on the podcast. Celtics are getting set to go on a 6-game road trip, which they're going to be all over the place, man. So it starts on Saturday night in Atlanta, a matchup I do want to talk about briefly because I think that could be another one of those, like Miami Heat. They're in position to be a potential first-round matchup for the Celtics. They go at Atlanta, at Houston, at Minnesota, at Portland, at Utah, and then round out with what should be a really fun game on the 21st of March at Sacramento. What are the things that stand out to you, Greg, when we look at this upcoming road trip?
It's a lot of traveling. I think ending the road trip in Sacramento could be really, really tough for this team. That might be a game where it's a schedule loss. Like the Kings in Sacramento, a really tough team to beat. I don't have their home record, but I know it's ridiculous with the whole like the beam movement. And I think there are a lot of winnable games on this trip. I think the team should probably go 4-2. I think 3-3 would be a disappointment. I would imagine I'm calling that Kings game a loss just at the end of the road trip. Everyone's exhausted and the Kings are tough to play. So one other game, if you had to pick one other game to lose on that trip, what would it be?
Other than the Sacramento game, I mean, oddly enough, I kind of feel like that Houston game is set up for a loss. And the reason I say that is that feels a little bit like one of those games where the Celtics just don't come out with the right mentality. And Houston's a mess. Houston's bad. But this is, think of the Oklahoma City game. And Oklahoma City is far better than Houston is. But you come out with your guard down and, the Jalen Green, Alperen Sengun, like they have some guys that are talented, that are hungry. And I know Jalen Green's back into, mixing words with Bill Simmons again. So maybe he's thinking about, all right, I got to put it on the Celtics. That's Bill Simmons' team. That's going to be that he's going to take out his frustration. And so, Houston would be a game that I think could be a sneaky loss. Just because it's one of those games where you don't come out with that right mentality. You think, maybe that's a game where they rest some guys on this to try to, sneak in some additional rest. Cause we're getting towards that time of the season where, health is almost more important than your record. And we talked about this. What do I care more about? Whatever seed the Celtics are or what their health is? It's the health by a mile. I will deal with whatever the matchups are in the playoffs. Give us a healthy shot versus we get the 1 seed, but we're missing Rob and Brogdon and Al's, age is catching up to him. Like I will take that healthy team and be a 3 seed. That's something I would much rather do. So I think Houston's kind of a sneaky one. Sacramento is going to be a lot of fun. But I want to talk about Atlanta for a second, just because that is a matchup. It was funny. I was thinking about this when I was looking at the standings after they hired Quinn Snyder. After they're going through their own turmoil with, I don't think neither of us are big Trae Young guys or Trae Young believers.
Mhm.
So we'll see what happens with them in the offseason. But I was thinking about them as they were making that coaching change. And we haven't played them since the beginning of the season. So I was like, man, why can't I picture the Celtics playing the Hawks? Oh, it's because they have a game this Saturday against them, and then they close the very last game of the regular season against the Atlanta Hawks. But if we're going back to looking at the way things could shake out in the first round, I feel like if it's not the Wizards, who are currently in the 10 seeds, they'd have to win 2 games in that play-in if everything stays the way it is. I feel like out of that group that would be in the play-in, the Hawks would be a heaven sent to play in the first round, as opposed to playing the Raptors and Heat, which I think the Raptors pose a lot of similar issues to the Heat as far as the coaching, and then also just having, in my opinion, a much higher ceiling with their talent level.
Yeah, and the Hawks have a lot of talent. I just think the style that they play is conducive to the Celtics just sweeping that series, or gentleman's sweep, winning in 5 games. And it's just not going to be a physical battle. Like all of the guards that we have are more physical than both of their best players. Trae Young is wispy, and then DeJounte Murray also, I mean, you could describe him as wispy as well. They're just like these 2 guys that it looks like the wind could just carry them like the leaf in Forrest Gump. You know what I mean? And they're just like kind of floating on the breeze. And that's kind of how I see both of those guys on the offensive end. DeJounte obviously has some good defensive chops, but I don't think that's going to put a lot of wear and tear on our guys. And that's what concerns me about any matchup in the first round. I want the one matchup that will not put too much on the legs and the joints of all the guys on the Celtics. So I think the Hawks, as you said, that would be heaven sent if somehow we ended up against the Wizards, who, they've been playing decently. They put up numbers. Porzingis having a good year. Kuzma's been playing really well, and they obviously have Bradley Beal. But like those guys, I think they could surprise somebody and end up in the 8 seed. I don't see them beating like a Miami or anything like that. Like I think Miami's probably going to end up being the 7 seed. But the Hawks, to your point, dude, I am not scared of the Hawks whatsoever. Like, bring them on.
Yeah, I'm not scared of them at all. And I think that's just an interesting game, I think, to watch, because that could be, a playoff preview. So I do think that's one of the more interesting games as we look at this road trip. Then, of course, we get to say hi to old friend Danny Ainge in Utah. And then the Sacramento one, I think that's just going to be a fun game. Hopefully we can maybe get our guy, Brendan Nunez, back on here. We'll chop it up with him to set that preview. But the Kings, are they still right now? Let me double check this. Are they the 2 seed? The 2 seed Sacramento Kings. How wild is that? I mean, I want to talk to our guy because I feel like they've been the 3 seed majority of the season. They're now up to the 2 seed with everything that's happened with the Grizzlies, which we talked about, the John Morant situation. Steven Adams got hurt again. Brandon Clark's up. They're just falling apart left and right. So good chance the Kings keep that 2 seed. And Joe Mazzulla looked like he had the inside track for Coach of the Year. Mike Brown is making a run at it right now with the Kings climbing up the standing. So that will be an interesting one to keep an eye on. But like you, Greg, I think 4-2 feels about right for this road trip. Less than that, it will be disappointing to see that if we get a 3-3 split. But I see here we got what else? We got our guy Winfred here as we round out this podcast here. GWE not driving down from Austin for this highly anticipated Rockets game. Well, shout out to our fellow Texas homie here, Winfred. We're not making it down for that. On a Monday night, that's a little bit of a tough ask. But if those games fall on a weekend, you can make sure that we'll find a way down there. So we'll have to make a Texas connection here on Green with Envy. Appreciate you tuning in, and appreciate everybody listening out there. As you can see here, we're doing a lot more on YouTube. We are live streaming basically all of our podcasts now. We're also putting up additional content on our YouTube page, to make sure that y'all are following and subscribing, as well as across our social medias for both Instagram and Twitter. But that's going to do it for this episode of Green with Envy. Greg, any final thoughts, and let the people know what they're going to hear on the way out?
We started this podcast talking about food. I'm going to end this podcast talking about food. My lovely girlfriend, Danielle, is making some homemade Crunch Wraps. Have you ever had a Crunch Wrap Supreme from Taco Bell, Will?
I have. I'm not a big advocate of Taco Bell, but I've had one.
Why are you not a big advocate of Taco Bell?
Dude, we live in Texas. There's like real, actual good Mexican food. Now, this is being home cooked, so it's different, but Taco Bell is just trash.
I wouldn't call it trash. I think
it's
like
trash,
Taco Bell is one of those things, like if you get it once or twice a year, it's perfect. Like Taco Bell is everything that it needs to be once or twice a year. If you're getting it, like more than that, I think you probably have some issues and like your
Well, there's
stomach
something else going on in your life,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. I mean, when you're in a place like Boston where we did not have, where that's all I thought Mexican food was Taco Bell, and then Chipotle came and it was like, oh my god, my mind is blown.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you some leeway there, but in the land of tacos on every street corner here that are 9 million times better than Taco Bell, I refuse to step foot in that establishment.
Yeah, and your girlfriend is Mexican from Mexico. My girlfriend is half Mexican, grew up in her family was from Donna, Texas. So like, yeah, you're right, but I don't like saying Taco Bell's trash. I think Taco Bell
I will
has
repeat
its
it. It is
purpose.
trash. Basura. Basura for those that are out there.
That's all I got. We're gonna end this pod here. For those of you that are listening on YouTube, not gonna hear any music, but for those tuning into the pod, music for my band down here in Austin, Texas. We are called Black Sheep Optimists, and this one is called Skywalking. Peace, everybody.
Peace.